Good afternoon, everyone. Ramadan Mubarak. You're so quiet today. I don't know what's happening. You're NYU Abu Dhabi, aren't you? Let's welcome
We need some
Elisar
energy
Antonios.
level.
We need some energy. Let's welcome Elisar Antonios, our guest.
Thank you so much. Great to be here.
It's
I was talking to
Go
your
ahead.
team, just want to say a few
Yes.
things. And I said, are you sure we do this during Ramadan? We debated it a little bit, but glad to see a good number of you out here.
Yes, it's very nice to keep our most meaningful conversations and activities going. And the most meaningful activities in our university, of course, are learning, are the classes. So the classes continue on regular schedule. We try to be sensitive, of course, to people's stamina and so forth. And then the other activities are, of course, research that keeps going. You can't get the labs go fallow or the papers that need to be written. And the others are our gatherings. And especially during Ramadan, we spend a lot of time on this campus with our students from 125 countries and our faculty from so many places, thinking about meaningful purpose in life and things like that. And in fact, this kind of Vice Chancellor's Roundtable, which I have every 3 weeks or so, with a leader of a particular sector, an industry, a non-profit organization who I admire or I've gotten to know and admire and who I think has meaningful things to share with our students as they carve their path towards their careers, but also in their lives. We love having these conversations, and given how intentional I know you to be about this, I think this is an especially great conversation to have during Ramadan. A brief introduction. Elisar Antonios is a long-standing city employee. She joined the company, the bank, in 2005, having served, and she is today, of course, the CEO of Citi for the UAE and also the head of the cluster Citigroup for the MENA region. So it's a big responsibility for this major global concern. Her banking career started earlier, however, in 1990 at Republic National Bank of New York, and she was there in the London office and also has spent time at Crédit Agricole and ABN AMRO, a Dutch bank close to my heart. She's developed very close relationships here in the country. She is from the UAE. She is a Emirati Lebanese woman born and raised here. And she really worked on a wide range of aspects of banking, public sector, high net worth, private clients, and important here, as we know, family offices. So that means advising and recommending and managing portfolios and looking for solutions that are tailored to particular companies, sectors, and clients. She represents Citi in significant trade and business associations, including the US-UAE Business Council, where we serve on the board together, AmCham Dubai, the UAE Banks Federation, and so forth. We'll have a lot more to say about her. She's widely recognized in the region. If you read Forbes and Financial News and so forth, you'll see her name frequently. She also is a graduate of distinguished institutions of higher education, as you are on your path to being. She earned her bachelor's in mathematics from the American University in Beirut, and then went on for her MBA to Imperial College in London. We hope that at some point in the future, if you were pursuing an MBA, you'll be able to do it at NYU Abu Dhabi, but that is a conversation to come. Let's jump in, and Elisar has made very clear to me that she would like, I will get some prompting questions started, but I know all of you, when we do these roundtables, you always have great questions. So in about half an hour or so, we'll start going to questions, so there's lots of chance of interaction. So one of these recognitions that I mentioned, in 2022, Forbes recognized you as one of the regions, the MENA region's top 100 most influential women in business. And that's, of course, an enormous recognition that doesn't come to many of your leadership over the years. Now, when we see leaders, it's often hard to imagine how they got started, where they came from. So we wanted to ask you what your most formative experiences have been for this kind of leadership.
First of all, I'm really happy to be here, Mariette, with you and to meet all the students. I mean, I always say this, there's a lot to learn when you speak to young talent and students that are today learning and looking forward to figure out how you start your career. And there's so much to learn from us as leaders who've been in the workforce for so long that sometimes maybe we kind of lose touch in terms of what your minds are looking for. And it's something I'm very passionate about, because today you're the future leaders. You're the future leaders of the world. You're the future leaders of the industries that you're going to ultimately decide to join. And you grew up in a totally different environment than how we grew up. So we were very, I feel, I mean, I have 2 children, grown up now, working in the workforce. And I often have those discussions with them. And I learn a lot speaking to both my children, Layal and Rayan, almost 29 and 26 years old. Because they have joined the workforce, a workforce that looks totally different than when I joined the workforce. And it's very important for any leader, be it business leader or public figure, to stay in touch with what is happening on the ground and what the new generation is looking, what are your concerns, etc. So I always say I learn a lot. That's why when we spoke about this briefing, I want to make sure that we have an open discussion and dialogue where I also get to understand what's on your mind and what's concerning you. So going back to your question, Mariette, in terms of the recognition, and I'm not going to sit here and say, oh, whatever, I was recognized and what have you. It is phenomenal for someone to feel success and be recognized in anything we do. That's how we are as human beings. I mean, even when you go to school as a kid, you want to come home, you want your teacher to recognize your good work and puts a smile on your face. You come home and you want to tell your parents about that, and you want that reassurance. So in business, it's the same thing. I was thrilled to be recognized by Forbes. And I know that, I mean, it does take a lot of work, but it can be done. And is it something that kind of I was very focused on, or kind of took a lot of time thinking, how do I get recognized? The answer is actually no. I was just doing my work and trying on a daily basis to bring the best version of me. And not necessarily looking if Mariette is next to me and say, well, how can I become like Mariette? It was all about, how do I bring the best version?
That was a really good decision not to do that.
No, just because you're sitting next to me, but your success is recognizable as well. What I meant to say is, in terms of continuously competing with oneself, to bring the best in you, and getting to a place where you look back and you say, I like that. Or maybe I need to do it differently, or maybe I need to bring a better version, or maybe I can be a better version. But the biggest thing was around continuously competing with myself to try to bring the best in terms of the ultimate result.
I think that is such a wonderful answer. Look, and you have really spoken here to a certain practice of self-reflection and learning from what goes well and also what does not go so well. And I think that really is a very honest answer. Just because I know this, I want to ask you a little bit about growing up in the UAE, how different it was, and what set you on your way to AUB, because you truly are a born and raised, you might as well be an Emirati person. So can you tell us a little bit about your educational journey that set you on a path in the end to this career in finance?
Sure. So I was, or my family was lucky enough to come to the UAE in 1964. My father first came to Dubai and then found his way to Abu Dhabi in 1966.
From Lebanon, right?
From
Yeah.
Lebanon. Well, he was in Kuwait before, because Lebanon, and I know maybe many of you in the audience has Lebanese friends or Lebanese themselves. It's such a small country, a very, very small country, whereby, and I know today a lot of Lebanese are leaving the country to find a better living, insecurities and what have you. But even in the old days, Lebanese were leaving Lebanon because it is actually a very, very, very small country, and therefore opportunities were not available for all. It's a very small economy, it's a tiny place, and Lebanese are in general explorers. So they like to travel, they like to, they're ambitious, they're very, they speak languages and they like to explore. So my father was one of them, like many, many other Lebanese. And the Gulf at the time was a booming place, which, by the way, continues to be. And I don't know whether we'll touch in terms of all the gloominess that's happening in the world and how blessed we continue to be in this region to continue to see growth. So the Gulf was a place for employment and opportunities. And so my father ended up by coming to Abu Dhabi in 1966. And clearly the place was totally different than what it is today. But I say blessings because in one's lifetime, I think you are blessed if you witness miracles. And to me, the transformation of the UAE is a true miracle. And that's why I say I'm blessed that I actually witnessed this miracle. And so I've known the UAE since the day I was born. And things have changed tremendously. But I think growing up here has built a certain level of resilience as well. So a combination of a Lebanese with all the issues and challenges in a small country like Lebanon, and coming to a country like the UAE, where the sky is the limit, that combination of resilience and aspiration and leadership in this country, setting the bar higher and higher and higher on a daily basis and actually attaining the successful outcomes, I think that shaped me as an individual in terms of my resilience, my passion, persistence, knowing that actually things, and maybe if we want to call them impossible things, happen. So it set that drive. I definitely got that from my father, who was an explorer himself and was successful, but also being in an environment where you could witness impossible things happening has definitely shaped me. And you being here today on the campus in Abu Dhabi, I really hope you'll have the opportunity also to kind of reflect on where we came from and where we are today. But definitely these are things that have impacted me tremendously, Mariette.
Yes, and it's really almost hard to imagine. I first came here in 2007, and I think about transformation of the country and all that's possible. And knowing your story, growing up and going to school at Shuaifat International School, but in Sharjah, boarding in Sharjah because there was no Shuaifat in Abu Dhabi. I mean, that's just an amazing thing to think about.
That was in 1976, where the Lebanese war broke. And, our parents said, well, there is this school that opened up, but it's in Sharjah. And in those days, it used to take us 3.5 hours to go from Abu Dhabi to Sharjah, at least, because you'll get sandstorms, the routes were not well defined, etc. But yeah, I experienced that. And that year, Mariette, Shuaifat took one of the old campuses of CCC, which is a major construction company that built the Gulf. And because they didn't have time to build a school, so we were actually in a like a labor camp, which was a site where this specific house would be, for example, grade 3, that specific house. So we'd go into actually a home, and the home would be divided in such a way where we would have our classes. So, but it was an amazing experience.
It is an amazing experience, a true pioneer experience, and so. It gives a little context for seeing our own campus purpose built with everything you need, so shining new, catered precisely to a university. It was a very exciting development to build it. But for you to walk into an institution like that must really be something. You then went to another very beautiful campus, AUB. I wanted to ask you a little bit about your university journey, because of course connecting university learning to career opportunities is what a lot of what these conversations are about. You did your bachelor's in mathematics, which I thought was just fabulous. The idea that I could have done a bachelor's in mathematics is so far-fetched, so I think that's great. And then you did your MBA. So tell us a little bit about what your university education has meant to you.
It definitely gave me a very solid ground, but I want to just step back, Mariette, and reflect a little bit as to why I did a bachelor in mathematics. And the answer is, it was just by chance. I never dreamt, it wasn't like, oh, I'm dreaming to do a bachelor in mathematics, and not at all. So the reason I went to the American University of Beirut, I shared that just now with Mariette, is that, yes, I grew up in Abu Dhabi. I graduated, I was not 18 years old yet. My parents were very worried to send me anywhere outside of our region. And they said, that's it, you go to the American University of Beirut. I personally think that was a great decision from their part, because it definitely helped me connect to my roots as a Lebanese. And the American University of Beirut has tremendous history in terms of its existence in the region, and the many actually leaders that actually went to this school and continues to be a tremendous force of reason in the region. I'm very passionate about the American University of Beirut. But at the time, so I graduated from school in I'll give out my age, it doesn't matter. I graduated from school in 1984. And at the time, I was very good in sciences, very good in mathematics, had that analytical mind. And if you come from our part of the world, there's always that aspiration of parents for people to become doctors or engineers or a lawyer, right? So I knew I didn't want to become any of those, but I didn't know what I wanted to be honest. And my parents were like, and there's always that pressure, but she can study medicine, she can become an engineer, why not? It was like, how come she doesn't want to do that? And I said, I know what I don't want to become. I know what I don't want to become, but I'm not sure what I want to become. And at the time, there was all this kind of wave around computer science as a major. And it was new, it was exciting. So I applied and I got accepted. But then there was a major conflict in Lebanon where the campuses had to get divided between two regions. And the region I was kind of from, the country's so small, but anyway, the region I could go to, the campus I could go to wasn't offering computer science. So I got called by the Dean of Engineering, and he said, I remember him, he was Dr. Klink, and he says, Elisar Farah? I said, yes, that's me. And we were like, everybody who had applied, they called all of us because they needed to figure out who studies what and what have you. And he says, sorry, we have to tell you, we're not offering this program, but we looked at your grades, and guess what? Congratulations, we're admitting you to the engineering school. So I stood up and I said, Dr. Klink, with all my respect, we have 3 options on the application. Do you see anywhere I've applied for the engineering school? He says, no, what a surprise. Why didn't you? Yeah. And I said, well, could the answer be is that I don't want to become an engineer? Like, is that an option? Could that be a possibility? And he says, yes, but maybe you didn't get the right guidance. I said, no. I got the right guidance, and I know I don't want to become an engineer. So he said, what do you want to do? He says, well, you chose mathematics as your second option. I said, yes. He says, why? I said, well, I'm good in maths. Why not? It'll be a good base. And that's how I studied mathematics. So chose me rather than I chose it. And it was a phenomenal bachelor degree, honestly. it gave me a very good foundation to do whatever I want in, later on in life. And for some reason, my father was in business, and like many of the Levantine families that came to the UAE, built the country. So I could see, I'd go into his office at times, and all I could see is senior men. I never saw senior women in his company. And we can say we're talking about 1970s, 80s, kind of maybe it wasn't that easy for women to work. But in my mind, I kind of always, the one dream that still resonates in my mind is that I'd wake up and I'd see this young girl, me, Elisar, looking into a boardroom filled with men. And in my mind, the only image I was seeing is that I'd be in a profession where I'd be dressed in some kind of suit, carrying a briefcase and having a seat at that table. So as I did mathematics, I said, okay, so how do I attain that image? I need to fulfill that image. I keep seeing that image. And I said, okay, no engineer, no doctor, then maybe business. And then that's how I kind of pivoted into an MBA in finance. I had the right analytical kind of founding with mathematics, and it took me 3 years to be more exposed to kind of different majors and speaking to professors. And that's kind of how I chose finance and an MBA degree to kind of try to bridge that gap for me to be able to attain that image that I was, reflecting on or seeing in my dreams. So that's how I got there, I suppose, with this major.
Powerful story. I didn't know. And I think indeed projecting somewhere you can see yourself, even when there's not a lot of you or people who look like you around, is a really powerful thing to have gotten from a young age. I think that your teachers may have encouraged you. Were there mentors or teachers along the way who said, Elisar, you can do this, that kind of thing?
So there are, my father was very determined not to differentiate in giving opportunities for his boys from his girls. So we were 2 and 2 in the family in terms of gender. And my parents were very clear that opportunities will get equal opportunities, and it's whatever we want. We want to, in terms of studying, education was very important to them. But I'd like to highlight the role of my mother, who chose not to work because she was kind of following my father from Kuwait to the UAE. When we were born, there were no schools in Abu Dhabi. So at a young age, the private schools, the first private school that came where you would think you'd get a good education, Mariette mentioned Shuaifat in 1976. By that time, I was like maybe 9 or 10 years old. So I needed education before, and I had an older brother. So there was all that, typically you would go back to Lebanon for schooling and come on holidays and what have you. So my mother needed to be free, but free to be able to provide that lifestyle for us. But she continues to be a very, very wise woman, where she always, kind of instilled in us the need for us as girls to be financially independent. And that we can do whatever we want to do. And I think that was extremely important. Though maybe as we speak about role models, maybe at the time those role models of having maybe a board member who's a female or etc. were not necessarily there, but she knew that this was extremely important. But my dad has a cousin who was, and that's why I went to Imperial College. She did her PhD in mathematics. And I was influenced by her to put number 2 as mathematics at AUB. She says it's a good ground, a good a base to have if you don't know what you want to do. And she was a very, very, she's the first kind of strong female from my culture that I looked up to. She became a doctor that was celebrated. And I think having her in my life as an achiever, having my mother setting that important kind of ground, and my parents in terms of equal opportunity were my first kind of, I would say, mentors, role models. And then clearly in work, depending which institutions I worked for, I'd be happy to talk about the importance of mentorship and sponsorship and the difference between mentorship and sponsorship in one's career.
Yeah, talk a little bit about that, because I think role models can both be very close or very distant, as you say. Just something you look up to. Mentors, that relationship is a little different. And then what about a sponsor? Tell us about mentors and sponsors in your life and how you think about those roles.
So, I mean, a mentor is someone you would go to have a discussion, if you want to call it like a coach, and brainstorm, and that person would share from their experiences. I've done this, no, this worked, I've done that, maybe you want to look at this, and what have you. Which is a very, very important role. And at Citi, we focus a lot on mentorship programs. And I think it is important for people to have mentors, whether we call them mentors or coaches, because I also have a coach that I personally chose, I continue to work with till today. But a sponsor is a different role. A sponsor is someone that has a voice, and where he or she in that meeting is going to advocate for you when you're not present. And it is very important in corporate life to have a sponsor. Mentors are important, but for career progression, making sure that you have a sponsor is, in my opinion, quite crucial. And we talk a lot about kind of diversity, inclusion, and why the gap is not necessarily filled. And there are a lot of studies that show, because sponsorship is not kind of used, I would say, as much.
It's a very good observation that I've certainly witnessed in academic life as well. And I would say that, would you agree that mentors can become sponsors if the relationship is good and the mentor happens to be within your organization or industry?
I think they can become, provided that mentor is at that senior level where they have that seat at the table. Because sometimes mentors they don't have to be more senior than you. They can have the experience, I remember in school, you put like a buddy system. A new student arrives, and there's that kind of buddy student around that new student to kind of show them around and what have you. A mentor can become a sponsor, but they need to have that seat on the table.
Yeah, authority and decision-making power and influencing power is important. And if I reflect on our careers, which trucked kind of in parallel in some ways, even though we didn't know it, I would think that I probably had more woman mentors because you needed advice and so forth. It was easier to go to a woman professor sometimes for me. But that once you got to the levels where decisions are being made, the discrepancies were so huge in gender in terms of leadership on faculties and museums, wherever I worked, that it was also extremely important to foster mentorship with men and actually allyship from men who could recognize that importance. So while we're often asked, I'm sure this happens to you, what more can women do to help women? I always say, I'm delighted to help women and men, but I really would like men also to help women. That's sort of, so thinking broadly about human capacity more than just gender seems important. Now, I just want to ask you, before we dive into banking, the specifics of banking a little bit, but what do you like about finance? You said that mathematics found you, but you chose banking in the end. What do you like about it?
What do I like about finance? Do you see dollar signs? No, I'm joking.
AED numbers. Yeah,
I'm just joking. But if you think about, if you think about economies, and if you think about how the world what happens around the world, I think the power of moving money across the world and having these trade agreements and creating opportunities for growth and creating jobs. I mean, all of this cannot be done without having that kind of engine facilitating. So to me, it's that engine that is facilitating for growth, job opportunities, enabling progress, etc. So that's, I suppose, kind of what attracted me to the industry. And oh boy, how that industry has changed over the past 32 years. I mean, where we are today and where I started in banking, where we were filling ledgers for every trade or transaction and what have you, and how we conduct business today. So it's really been, a specific industry that has witnessed tremendous change, disruption, and innovation that's made the past 32 years of my life very exciting, because it's that continuous learning.
And you clearly grew with Citi in your career and from earlier on. Can you say a little bit, before we go to change, and I do want to hear about the change, but maybe this relates. There's often a lot of confusion out there on the difference between banking and investment banking. How absolute is that difference? How does it apply? How do you think about that at Citi?
Yeah, and there is a difference, because I mean, banking is an industry. I mean, it's an industry, it's a sector in an industry, banking. But under banking, many different things happen, right? And many different clients are serviced under banking, and many different activities. But the most exciting one that also kind of we hear on the street is around investment banking. And when I speak to graduates who are applying to the banking industry, and they're so focused on just applying to investment banking, I often say, why? I mean, what is the research that you have done that is so, you are so focused on saying investment banking or nothing? And I think it has a lot to do with the movies that Hollywood actually puts on the market, in terms of kind of the excitement of investment banking, the wheeling, dealing, the advisory, merging companies, etc., etc. So investment banking is actually around mergers and acquisition. So if a company is selling, or a company wants to buy, or a company is private and they want to list on the stock exchange, so an IPO, or a company is looking, or institutions looking to raise capital. So it's kind of exciting. It has a vibe. But guess what? I mean, that's great, right? But then if that base is not working in terms of the operation, having the capital to lend, ability to do payments, servicing the consumers, you and I as individuals that are clients of a bank, that then creates that base for then there to be an investment bank business available. So investment banking is a certain product mix servicing a specific client. It is exciting. It is what we read about when there's a major transaction happening in the world. So it's exciting, and I think that's why, you often see people pivoting towards saying, okay, it's exciting, investment banking, but it doesn't happen on its own. And there's so much that happens, and so many different clients that you service that don't necessarily require investment banking. But within Citi, it is a business that we do. Investment banking, it's a certain vertical that we focus on. And in general, American banks are so focused on being ranked as number 1 in advisory, so there's all these accolades that come around it, and naturally, there's a lot of focus on it, and these are the mandate where you charge a lot of fees as well.
Yeah, so it has something to do with those dollar signs as well. I think the returns for the successful IPO driver are good, of course. Tell us a little bit about what your portfolio as CEO of Citibank UAE and MENA cluster lead, what does it encompass? What does your week, month look like? Every day is different. I know that much.
Yeah, I mean, every day is different because with the mandate that I currently have as the Middle East and North Africa head for Citibank, you're talking about 12 countries. We're present in 12 countries. In every country, and I always say that, many have heard me say that, there's never a dull moment. Because let me tell you the countries when I list the countries, you'll understand why I'm saying that. So clearly we're in the UAE, we came in 1964. We're in the Lebanon. We went there in 1955. We're in Jordan, Kuwait, Qatar, Bahrain, Egypt, Morocco, Tunisia, Algeria, and Saudi Arabia. So when you look at these, and we cover Iraq, we don't have a presence, but we have and I've been to Iraq actually. I should tell you about my Iraq trip, my trip to Baghdad in 2018. But there's always something, so you sleep, you wake up to some news, and there's ultimately some news coming out from one of these countries, right? So that's what makes the job actually very exciting in terms of what's going on, the different issues. And when it's not only about banking, because you do business in this country, then you're impacted with everything else that's going around it. You really need to think not only about the activity, but you really need to think about the safety of your employees that are based there. You really need to think about the interest of the organization and the capital that we put there. Is there an economic crisis? How does that impact the business? What is the exposure? Often, the crisis management, I would say, discipline that we have, especially, in some of the countries that have gone through major economical challenges. I can speak about Egypt, for example. There's a lot that's gone, and today is still going on in Egypt. Lebanon from a safety security perspective, and then all the crisis management we all had to do during the pandemic. And so trying to manage that for 12 countries where regulations, are not necessarily the same across different holidays, currency devaluation, countries defaulting, etc. So that actually required a good 10-hour, 12-hour a day. So the excitement is that there wasn't a day that looked like the next day. So that kind of kept me and the management team and kind of on our toes. So that's kind of exciting. Tiring, yes, but a lot of learnings along the way.
It's fascinating to think about your taking up your role as the CEO in December 2020. I always think they give the really hard jobs to women, but you did it in the middle of the pandemic. But even before then, can you share a little bit, when you think about yourself as the leader of such a significant banking concern in 12 countries, really being responsible for the resources and clients put their trust in you. When you think about all that, clients at all these levels, from the very personal to the institutional, what's one of your proudest moments at Citi, when you look at your Citi career, where you think like, I made a difference here? You can brag a little bit.
Yeah.
You're not given to bragging, I know.
Yeah. Listen, no leader can be successful without having the right team and people around them. So can't brag on, you can't individually brag, because any success, especially in Citibank it's a publicly listed organization. It has its shareholders. We're in 99 countries. I did not create the brand. Citi is Citi, been here for over 200 years. And the reason I mention that is that, you come to this responsibility with a lot of history behind you. And it could be a double-edged sword. So you'd say a lot of history, you have the brand of Citi, everybody will talk to you. Yes, if I call for a meeting with anybody, name anybody in the world, any senior leader, say, I am so-and-so at this senior position in an organization like Citi, they will see me because of the brand I carry initially, if they don't need me. But then when I see the double-edged sword, then you need to perform. You need to be in a position to gain that trust that has come with you representing the organization. And that's kind of I would say the double-edged sword when you get to these positions. But because it's a huge operation, it's not an individualistic effort. And therefore, you really need to have the right team around you, and you need to hire smartly, and you need to trust your team, and your team to trust you as well. In an organization like Citi, which has many different verticals, one of them is investment banking, but many other different products and services, and a global organization like that where you have what we call matrix reporting. So you have people that work with you on the ground in the country you are in, but then you have your partners that are also reporting globally. So actually, the management style had to be something around trusting each other, collaborating, and aligning interests. So it's very key for me as a leader to be in a position where I could have all the management team aligned around the same interest, whether they were reporting horizontally or vertically, and agreeing on what the goal is, and what do we need to do, what do we need to achieve, so that we're kind of all aligned. I mean, in football, I'm sure many of you are fans of football. Not everyone is not everybody is scoring, right? Can't, it won't be, the game cannot be played that way. But everyone needed to do their roles properly, to their best, to be able to win. And I look at that the same way.
It's a very good management philosophy and leadership philosophy. I think it's not about being a boss. It's about truly being a leader, a model, and someone who can organize the best out of people in some ways. And we spend a lot of time on this campus working on these kinds of skills, even when it doesn't feel like we're doing it, because there's, of course, sometimes conflict and difficulty in this work of any organization one leads or contributes to. Surely not every step of your career was easy. Can you reflect for us on something that was hard and how you overcame it, how you found the strength to kind of keep going? And
no, clearly not easy. I mean, there's kind of hurdles along the way. Like a student, you choose different courses, and some courses you kind of, you're comfortable with, and others you still need to take them. You still need to score well to be able to graduate. And I think one's career is similar. You don't always have everybody supporting you in what you are trying to achieve, but you still want to get there. So the art of diplomacy is very important in one's career, and the ability of putting personal issues on the side and not personalizing stuff and focusing on what you want to achieve. So if I put that in the context of university, sometimes we take a course with a teacher that we cannot stand. I'm sure, I've had those. It happens, right? It's there. I think one's very lucky if you go through your university with kind of loving every single teacher, but some we do, some we don't, for whatever reason. They could be, they're in their own rights very good teachers, but it is what it is. But you need to kind of find that way of working with that teacher, or if you're put with a team where you don't like anybody, you don't like all the team members, it's that kind of ability to kind of negotiate and be diplomatic and stay focused on what you are trying to achieve to get your goal. There are many examples, Mariette, out there for me to, and I would maybe want to reflect on them as a female from this part of the world, where I've really had to be on specific mandates or transactions where it was maybe not very kind of, maybe where I was not given necessarily a similar opportunity as others, where maybe it's at times it's my idea which doesn't get heard, but then somebody else repeats the idea and it gets heard. And these are things I've had to navigate. And I have a lot of stories around that, but I think what kept me going to overcome those is ultimately saying, you know what, I just need to get through this to be in a position one day to influence and change certain behavior and cultures so we can actually give opportunities to all our children irrespective of what their genders are. And I always give this example. I say when, I grew up in a family where we were siblings from different genders. We were given equal opportunities. Our parents they wanted to be proud of all their children. But then you get into society and then suddenly you feel, well, okay, I'm not so sure that it is equal opportunity. But I think today we're in a much better place than when at least I started my career.
And as is the case for me, this is probably on balance the best time in history to be born a girl. And similar things might be said for people from not historically white populations. And so I think what you say leads seamlessly into what will be my last question before I'm going to turn it over to the students you want to hear from so much. I really admire what you do for cultural leadership. You're not only looking at that bottom line, you understand that that bottom line also relates to how well people work together and live together. You are the senior sponsor of Citi's Women's Network in the UAE, and you are a founding member of the Middle East Inclusion and Diversity Council at Citi. So that's a more international enterprise. So can you talk a bit about why diversity and inclusion are important to you and how you go about, telling stories like you just did or advancing that work at Citi?
And I want to talk a little bit about the Middle East inclusion and diversity. When we first started talking about that, and this is a council of many of us from the private sector that came together in the UAE with great partners like PwC who had led that globally, and we started talking, should we do something for the Middle East? And we said yes. And when we started debating whether we put diversity, because initially it was Middle East Diversity Council. Then we started thinking a little bit more about it. Well, is it just diversity, and what do we mean by diversity? Should we just keep on kind of hammering the nail and saying diversity is important, and there's so much research out there on the importance of diversity? Yes, there is a lot of research out there and valid, research why one needs to focus on diversity. But to me, it's more about inclusion. Inclusion is key. And there we thought then we will be encompassing and putting into that pot, the wider understanding of the gender diversity. Gender diversity is clearly important, but it's one thing, right? But then what do we do with, people of determination? What do we do with people who are not so well-to-do in terms of their social upbringing or status, to be able to be included, be it from an education perspective, to be able to be at a position to compete on equal footage. So that's where we went to say Middle East inclusion and diversity. I think it's very, and I personally believe so much in that differentiation between inclusion and the importance of kind of putting them together. So yeah, I think you can see that, but I'm very passionate about this. I think at the crux of things, if we wanna deal with issues out there, social issues, global issues, if we're able to provide equal education and equal opportunities, I don't think we would witness many of the conflicts that we are witnessing today globally.
That is a hope that we really share and a vision that Abu Dhabi shares with you, born in the UAE as well. You're very interested in emerging talent. We have lots of emerging talent here. So the mic will come around. Please wait for the mic and say who you are and as you ask your question. Who would like to ask a question or make a comment? In the front, Terry.
Thank you so much, Ms. Antonios, and thank you so much, Vice Chancellor Westerman, for this conversation. I think I'm really happy to hear the conversation about inclusion and diversity, not just within Citi, but also within the industry in the region and on a global scale. And my question is also related to sort of this change in the sector, where companies are sort of aligning to ESG practices and environmental and social consciousness. And I'm just curious to see what are the current obstacles that are preventing the industry from even advancing further in becoming more socially and environmentally sustainable and becoming a better industry, a quote unquote. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your question. And a very valid question. Change can happen when everybody has signed up for the change. Because today, if you say, these are the ESG values, I've signed up to them as an institution, let's start the journey. It's a chain, actually, and everybody else needs to sign up more or less at the same time and making those steps together. Because you cannot today, for example, let's talk about finance and let's talk about sustainable finance and what is happening in terms of the climate change and what have you. If today the banking industry says, I will, stop, I'm going to do, all my financing is going to be aligned with sustainability and ESG principles and what have you. The market is not ready yet. I'm not sure we'll have electricity running. So that's where there's all that steps that need to be taken at the same time. And I think, we're going to be here, I suppose, all of us by October, where Abu Dhabi, the UAE, is hosting COP28. And what the UAE is very focused on, because these are discussions that I've also had, is making sure this COP28 is not just another meeting, where we're, everyone is kind of pledging allegiance. Yes, we should do this. Great. I don't think anybody doesn't want to, move there, but it does need specific steps to be taken at a specific pace, right? So that's why it's taking time. But today we cover, as an institution, Citi covers in the UAE more than 500 global companies, let alone the companies that we work with that are our national champions in the region, in the UAE as well. All of these companies have an ESG strategy. They're hiring consultants. Everybody is focused on that. But it does take time. And hopefully, forums like COP28, and I'm very confident that there's going to be major announcements coming up from the UAE in terms of the advancements that needs to be done.
Thank you very much. I think this is a tremendous opportunity for us to learn. I would like to ask you those two questions. First of all, looking at the financial services industry nowadays, when we see banks going bankrupt like Silicon Valley, when we see banks not only in America, also in Europe, we have now Credit Suisse and UBS. We can see how, for example, Citi stopped some of their operations in Mexico, and the Deutsche Bank is also showing those decreasing in the stock. I'm a little bit concerned about what will be the future for us that are joining this industry, and how can we be prepared for this new landscape in the financial sector. This also leads to my second question, that is more about wealth management. I think that this financial crisis also is moving the banks to focus more in wealth management, because that provides a stable floor in terms of fees and income. Wealth management is my main source of interest, like to join the industry. I think that the UAE has a really high amount of ultra high net worth individuals and high net worth individuals. However, I don't see really the same amount of opportunities to join this market as compared to investment banking, for example. So my second question is, what's your advice for us like to join the wealth management industry?
Thank you for your question. The first question, so that if my memory doesn't fail me, was around the evolution of the banking industry, and
the current
and all the
failures we're
changes
seeing,
and the failures to where we are. I mean, a couple of things I will say. This is one of the oldest industries out there, right? From the day the world started doing barter deals, you know, I sell you my rice, you send me your oranges or whatever, to where we, you know, the IOU notes that the banking industry started in, and looking at that industry and trying to analyze that, there were many, many, many failures, names in the banking industry that today, you know, don't exist. I started my career in 1990. There are many names that are not there anymore. Institutions have merged, or they've gone bankrupt, or what have you. And similarly in other industries, if I tell you today Kodak, for example, I'm sure you don't. I mean, maybe you kind of know what Kodak is, but I mean, it's not a brand that we necessarily today identify with images or photos, right, or photography. So the industry will continue to evolve. And in my 32 years of career, I've seen many, many failures. So nothing new. It is part of the business world and cycles. But are opportunities in the banking sector, will they, or in the financial institution space, still exist? I'm a true believer that the answer is yes, because you will still need that operating model to finance, to transfer, to invest your own money. Wealth management is one of them, etc., etc., etc. But is the model going to be different? The answer is absolutely yes. Is it going to be, you know, much more, you know, digitized, etc.? The answer is absolutely yes. But today, when we look, if we want to talk a little bit about the failure of the recent, I mean, it's been a very busy past couple of weeks for all of us in the industry, where we've had to be on many, many calls, speaking to clients, speaking to investors, because, I mean, as an individual, if you're a client, you are worried about the safety of the bank. And SVB, Silicon Valley Bank, the news around that, it did create a lot of jitteriness in the system. But I'd say, well, maybe the media had a lot of role also to play. Everybody was running to take their money out of the bank. Was it necessary? Wasn't it necessary? It's a question mark. Today, depositors are secured, and we woke up on Monday with a new owner of SVB. So that's kind of like on the consumer or depositor side. That's great. But I mean, there are learnings as someone managing a bank or in the banking industry. There are learnings from SVB, and it was all around risk management, the placement of the liquidity with the interest rates increasing. This is what put them in that position. Credit Suisse is another story, but for different reasons, totally unrelated. So this is not your 2008 financial crisis. Totally unrelated incidents, but that kind of happened in the same week. So to answer your first question, the industry will continue to exist for sure, but we will definitely see names that disappear, merge, or what have you. On your second question, and my background is wealth management and asset management. My first 20 years of my career, that's the area I spent, I mean, most in terms of focus and discipline. And all the banks actually are focused on wealth management. So it is an industry that has a lot of opportunities out there. It's, I mean, when I reflect on my career, there were many learnings for me focusing on wealth management. And it is an exciting career because you really, especially if you're you're advising, you're a counselor, you're being trusted with the family's wealth or the institution's financial assets to be placed looking for opportunities, etc. You really need to be up to speed with changes, with economic influences, with the ability to analyze an opportunity and advising on it depending on the risk profile. So if you want to connect on LinkedIn, I'm very happy to put you in touch with people in the industry for you to maybe understand a little bit more how you can start within that space.
Very, very nice offer. Please.
Hello, thank you so much for your time today. My name is Yu Yang. I study economics and finance here at NYU Abu Dhabi. So in line with the conversation we had about sustainable finance, as I move into this region, I get to learn about Islamic finance for the first time. And given the rise in tension of all the sustainability and the ESG practices, I want to learn more about the city's perspective or yourself, the prospect of Islamic finance or the possibility of internationalization of such practices.
Sure, thank you for your question. Though I'm not an expert on Islamic finance, but it is a product that we do offer and advise on within Citi, and there's a lot of demand for it that maybe initially started from a religious belief, but if you analyze Islamic finance, it is actually based on sustainability as well. So there is a huge demand for it in our region and also internationally in some of the regions in Asia. Malaysia is a big market, for example, for Islamic finance. In principle, does it differ from traditional finance? The answer, at the end of the day, it is finance, i.e. you're looking at the project, deciding whether to lend the project or not. It's how you structure that finance for it to be aligned with Sharia law.
Hi, Ms. Antonios, first of all, thank you so much for coming and taking the time to share your insights with us. My question was more about leadership. As you told us, you're a seasoned and successful leader in many different fields, particularly the banking one. And here among the audience, we have many aspiring leaders in business and beyond, perhaps, that are looking to join business fields and apply leadership that we learn and also that we can learn not only in university, but from people like you. My question was, as an advice to us aspiring leaders, what are some characteristics of a successful, effective, and inspiring leader?
I would say a couple of things. First, it's very important to have the ability to listen and to talk less. And actually in interviews as well, sometimes we interview people that are just talking all the time. Maybe it's the nerves sometimes, but it's very important to kind of listen. As a leader, your ability to listen to clients, to listen to your team, to listen to your employees is critical and crucial. So I'd say listening is extremely important. The other thing that I felt has worked a lot for me is my ability to project, where do I want to get to, but also my ability to put myself in the shoes of my team members or employees. Because it wasn't just about only my vision or what I wanted to achieve. It was very important to focus on how How am I projecting that message? How would it make X, Y, and Z feel? Do team members and people that work for us necessarily feel that we have their best interest? Are we able to align our interests? I think your ability to connect with your people and putting your people first is very important. Let me give you an example. We all went through the pandemic, right? I mean, all of us, and maybe we were in different parts of the world at the time, 2020 and what have you. I went through that being in the UAE. And what the UAE focused on is taking care of the people, making sure everybody is able to get the vaccine, putting the interest of the citizens first, whether you were a national, an expat, what have you, it didn't matter. And that ability of the leadership to focus on the people and their interest and safety from an economy and return perspective, we were amongst the countries that rebounded first, that were able to open our markets, etc., etc. So the focusing on the people and putting the people first is very, very important for any success, in my opinion.
Thinking about that, while the mic goes to this gentleman in front, a quick follow-up question on this that almost flips it around. What role does emerging talent, so like recent graduates, early career professionals, play in a global organization like yours? How do you think about talent?
I go back to saying the talent is the future leaders, be it in public sector, in private sector, as parents. As parents, I have 2 kids. I look at them as kind of the continuation of life cycle and the continuation of the family traditions and what have you. Critical, I would say, in terms of kind of the role that emerging talent can play, and that organizations focus on attracting. A little bit like universities, you want to always attract the right profile, and it's similar in business. So when we, as an organization, kind of run for our graduate programs, and we do the university rounds, and want to encourage people to apply to join cities programs. We're also kind of competing for that best talent, because the talent that you bring in today potentially are the leaders of your organization, the leaders of the industry, and it's kind of very, very, very important to make sure that we bring in the right people in the organization and at the university level as well.
It's absolutely true. And this is something about leadership that I definitely was never told and had to learn as I gradually came to be seen as a leader. One becomes a leader by being seen as a leader. It's an interesting relation, I think. I was never told that I would probably spend in any kind of leadership job, and it doesn't have to be at the top of an organization, or leaders also distributed across organizations, but in any one of these roles, and especially now in my job, I probably spent 60% of my day thinking about the talent. And in very concrete ways. How do we recruit all of you wonderful students? How do we recruit the best faculty to help them, nurture them, teach them, right for the culture, but also looking forward? And always that forward orientation. How does this institution become yet better in a next generation, stays with it? And then making sure that the talent can flourish inside. That's itself in its own. So you really end up spending a good bit of the pie chart on talent. You had a question.
Right. Firstly, thank you so much for spending this afternoon with us. I had 2 questions. The first is to do with like AI. So you mentioned that the industry has radically transformed over the last 32 years, but now we're at an inflection point where, a lot of jobs are expected to get redundant. So within the financial industry, any particular sort of segment of the workforce that you believe will get redundant? And secondly, I just want to understand what sort of motivates you at this point in time. Because, when you're an analyst, you want to become associate, and so you want to climb the sort of corporate ladder. Now, one could see you on the top of the corporate ladder, so what motivates you to wake up every morning and get at it?
I think he's reading my mind.
Tell us what's next, too. But first, answer his first question.
So there's a piece of paper. I'll try to share it with Mariette and maybe with all of you. It's around digitization, and it's around be digital or die. This is the paper: be digital or die. You institutions become digital or die, and it's actually true, right? So that transformation is very important, and there are a lot of jobs that's going to be impactful. And the survey, I think it was Alex and Partners that have done the survey, and the survey basically says, because they ask CEOs, they say, it says, do you think you'll be in your job in a year's time, or how many of you do you think you'd remain in your job? And depending on the age bracket, I would say, many have said, don't think I'll be around necessarily. It is a fast-moving change. And I tell you, many of the processes from an operational perspective are totally transforming. And it's very important that institutions invest in their talent for them to acquire new skill sets. Because there are things that are totally obsolete out there. Forget it, no one, and if you don't invest in yourself to be in a position to transform some of your skill sets and learn something new, you cannot stay in the industry. And I'd say that maybe not only for the banking industry, but for other industries also that have transformed. Technology is definitely one of them. So that continuous learning, definitely. So when I said I started my career, in a trading room, foreign exchange trading room, where I used to actually, I had to manually basically register every single transaction, and we would square our books at the end of the day, and if they didn't square properly, then we could stay until midnight to trying to find that, Today, this is automated. Everything is automated. So that transformation is extremely important. And today, when we interview for new talent, we're looking for different skill sets. We're looking for the ability of even talent to acquire to be very agile. Agility is very important. You cannot today, in the day and age that we live in, you cannot just, be focused on one thing. You really need that. You really need to have that flexibility and agility. So often if one interviews and you find that someone is very kind of, I don't want to say, find the word?
Rigid?
Thank you for finding rigid, because
hyper-focused.
The other word I had, I wasn't sure. I know you're taping. I wasn't sure I wanted to be to be taped saying that. So that rigidity, won't take you anywhere. And now I've forgotten your second question.
Well, this is how do you stay motivated? Because as you've said, you've been motivated every step of the way, you get bigger, but now you're CEO. So that was your question, I think.
The reflection point, is it?
Yeah, how do you get up in a moment, and what do you want to do next? What's next for you?
Yeah. So I think, for me, my days start early. I need to be energized, so I exercise in the morning. Very important for me to go into the office with the right spirit, because I know that when I walk that floor, right, if I am not sending the right vibes, I know that it impacts others. And I've learned that kind of the earlier on when I became in leadership positions, and there were times where I actually have not had my coffee and I'm not in a good mood necessarily for me to go in and say, good morning, everyone, with that, And I'd have team members that say, oh my God, what's wrong today? What did we say? What did we do? So then I realized I actually, as a leader, whatever you do impacts, right? Even if you're just walking, right? How do you kind of necessarily not say hello, etc. So it's very important for me, and it's a discipline that I have, Mariette, is that every morning I go in and I say, I need to send the right message to everybody. I need to lead. I need to be energized for people to be energized. So it was, I think, the energy, I was taking my energy from my team members, because I felt if I'm energetic, then it's that ripple effect, and therefore ultimately the atmosphere is better. The what next is the big question.
I can just tell you, while you think about how you want to answer that, we're at time, but I want to tell you that I don't leave home without having my coffee. So we share that. It's a very easy, everyone has their own little way of doing it. You may not like coffee. There may be something else that makes you feel good in the morning and centered. And coffee and Wordle, I don't leave home without it. But do you want to reflect a little bit about the shape of your career journey in relation to your life? You've given such wonderful examples of how you kept going, evolved with the place, keep giving back. You talked about your education, this really bulk of your very impressive career. It is indeed hard to think, how does one reflect on the going forward from that?
And I think, Mariette, I shared it with you. So when I'm personally at a point where I'm trying kind of to reflect. 32 years, I've attained recognitions internally in the organizations I've worked for. We've mentioned the external recognitions as well, and that what next is kind of like, so what more or what different? And I must say, the pandemic period was a time where I wanted to make sure I take a lot of learnings from it. So I did a lot of reflections during that period. And it was a period where we were also working a lot from home. And, for some reason or another, and I'd say I was blessed that in my home, we ended up, all of us, working from home and my children being in the country. So we were all in the same country, in the same house during the pandemic. And when I was reflecting during that period, I said, I've actually never spent so much time with my kids and husband as much as I have in my entire life, at the same time, as much as I've spent during the pandemic, because we were all locked down. And I started reflecting, great, I did all my career, throughout my career, lots of travel, lots of long hours, lots of outsourcing activities that I've had to outsource cooking, outsource driving, outsource this to be able to kind of balance that work-life balance. And I said, okay, the kids have grown up, so maybe it's okay if I stay out of the house. But then I said, but what do I want to be? Do I want to continue doing this executive corporate lifestyle? And if the answer is yes, then what is the goal? And what I soon realized is, remember I spoke about that projection where I was projecting and seeing there's that boardroom, but there are no females there. Why? No, then I said, okay, so this is kind of where I want to go. That projection, I wasn't seeing it. So I've become CEO for MENA, 32 years of banking career, but what I was not finding the answer from a professional corporate perspective as to what next that kind of was giving me that energy to continue to wake up. Then I said, then time to self-reflect. And I took that time. And so today, I'll be pivoting from a corporate career into a career where I want to be focused on what I'm passionate about and impactful. And more specifically, where I feel my experience can impact talent, impact the economies, and impact the people. So much more within the region that I'm from, which is Middle East and North Africa. And with that, you need to get to a point where you say, being a successful senior executive, you need to give it your all. You need to give it your all. And therefore, to be able to pivot and do something else, you need to be in that position to say, you know what, great career from a corporate perspective, and you take that decision to pivot. So this is my first, actually, public appearance where I basically share. I mean, it's out there in terms of the industry is aware, but I'll be stepping down from a corporate banking career and being engaged in different avenues and mandates where I feel my experience can benefit. And so while today you are learning, you step out of university, you start earning, and hopefully you'll get to a stage in your life where you feel, though maybe you are returning today in a way or another, but where you focus on the returning. So so that's where I am going to be focused on returning.
Beautiful and honest statement. Thank you for that, Elisar. You heard it here first. Learning, earning, and then returning, giving back, which also you can do through your life, as you've said, but you want to focus on it now, which is I can't think of a more beautiful closure to what you've told us. Among everything else we've learned from Elisar today, and I've learned, is these two vital things that are so hard in life. Remember, early on, she knew to say no. When that dean of the School of Engineering at AUB called her and all these students and said, guess what, you got in and everybody wants to go to that school. She said, you know what, no, actually I want to do mathematics. And then knowing when to step away, as George Washington did, as the President of the United States. It's such a hard thing to do when you're in that wonderful lifestyle of leadership. With it come all these benefits, as you know, these fun things like talking to all of you and whatever it is that comes with it. Knowing that you have more to give, actually, in another way. That's an incredibly powerful, leaderly thing to do. So please, a big hand for our great guest, Elisar.
Thank you so much.